So I think if I were writing your headline, I'd say the Senate has pivoted from one of the most contentious, partisan periods in the nation's history to passing this rescue package 100-0, all in one quarter of this year, from arguably the most partisan, divisive thing you could possibly do to coming together entirely, 100 of us, to meet this challenge.
I guess we're supposed to celebrate this. I feel more like we expected it, and it shouldn't have taken this long. Does the Senate really deserve a pat on the back for coming up with a relief package after the United States government, really, and the government overall at all levels, federal, state, local, has shut down all business because of a pandemic virus? This is doing their job, isn't it? I think the celebration here is a little strange. I think that maybe that's the only approach. Look, Mitch McConnell was just trying to get it done. I understand. He's trying to deal with Senate Democrats who have no integrity to protect, and so that gives them a lot of latitude to do whatever they want. But this, okay, it's going to help. But people that are asking me, what do you think of it? It's imperfect. It's not going to help everyone. It's not going to be enough money for some people. It's a Band-Aid on a gaping wound. That is what this is. Gaping wound on our economy. So we should all be clear on that right now. This is not like, okay, we're good for 60 days, 90 days. Oh, I wish we could all have a 90-day government-funded stay-at-home period to get past this whole virus, right? I really wish that was the case. People that are looking at this honestly understand that it's much more likely that we're going to have to see another relief package by about the middle of the next month. Right around when Trump is talking about the possibility of some of us going back to work, they're going to have to do another relief package. Pelosi's already discussing this. Others have already. Now, look, the House still has to vote on this, but my understanding is it's all agreed on. I watched some of Nancy Pelosi giving a press conference this morning, and no surprise, but guess what? Nancy Pelosi thinks that, she did a great job here. She really got everything she needed, and the Republicans were the bad guys. Nobody with an IQ higher than a toaster thinks Republicans are the bad guys in this. The Republicans worked with Democrats to come up with a bipartisan bill. Nancy Pelosi showed up at the 11th hour, started demanding all kinds of stuff, and turns out that the bill in the end was pretty close to the initial bill. There's some bad stuff in here. I mean, I would say bad. I mean, there's some stuff that just makes you say, is government it's just people are greedy and self-interested, including those in power, more so often those in power. So I guess maybe this never changes. But, the $25 million for the Kennedy Center, which is a performing arts center in D.C., a favorite place for the D.C. elite. It is, if you're a really important player in D.C. politics, you got to go to your box at the Kennedy Center. Fun fact, my mother used to be a dancer, a ballet dancer at the Kennedy Center, professional dancer. So there's a fun fact about the Sexton family. But the Kennedy Center is no more deserving, of a $25 million bailout than any other theater out there. There's a lot of them. And if people want to help theaters, I'm all for it. I live very close to a lot of Broadway theaters here in New York, and they're going to be in very rough shape. The rents on those places are astronomical. This is where you're going to get into a lot of Econ 101 for people, because I'm seeing people say, look, if you own one or two single family homes as investments and you're in reasonably good financial shape, can you probably waive or at least hold back on rent for a couple of months here? Maybe you collect it all down the line and work it into an elevated rent schedule going forward. Maybe you just take the loss on the month or two. Sometimes, landlords will give a month free. This happens in New York, so that it doesn't affect the actual rent price, but they'll give you a month where you don't have to pay rent as an inducement for you to move in the first year. So, usually people have some, look, all rents are a negotiation or started out as a negotiation, then they become a contract, but sometimes you have to amend the contract. What I'm saying is there are some people who are probably going to be able to say, all right, look, you've been good tenants. And by the way, I think this is the right move for those who can. I think this is the ethical, considerate, and decent thing to do for those who can. What about situations where someone has a mortgage payment for their home and a mortgage payment for a property that they own, and they need them, and they've lost their job? You know, their business is crushed. Maybe they own a bunch of restaurants. I don't know. I mean, there's so many tens of millions of people that are affected by this very negatively that you can come up with endless scenarios. But what do I say to the person who is being told, well, just waive the rent for your tenants in that house that you own because they lost their jobs? What about the guy who owns a house saying, I got a family, I got 3 kids. My life savings was this other property that I'm trying to build as a nest egg, and I waive the, where does that money go, right? Or what happens now? So it's very complicated. It's not as easy as just, all the landlords should let people stay rent free. Of course, my building is not waiving. They're not delaying. They're not waiving. Here in New York, it's a lot of give me the money. But I understand that this is going to be very complicated to unwind economically for a long time. And it is incumbent upon everyone to understand that this is not anyone's fault. And a lot of economic activity, and this was certainly true of the financial crisis, and what made people so upset about the bailout in the financial crisis was that Wall Street firms were acting poor. They were acting poorly. They were being greedy, and they were leveraging certain things in a way that they knew the government was backstopping them. They knew that the entry of Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac into this market meant that the government was effectively guaranteeing all these. And I don't get into too deep in the financial crisis, but what they did was gross. And some of them went bankrupt, Lehman Brothers. So it's not like all the firms were fine, but Goldman Sachs got bailed out 100 cents on the dollar, and that just struck people as wrong because there were a lot of greedy people at at many levels of Goldman Sachs, but certainly at the top, who made a whole lot of money. And then finally, the music stopped. And now we're being told, well, they get to keep making a lot of money because otherwise the whole economy melts down. That really stung. I mean, it was a very effective class warfare point because there was so much truth to it. It led to the Occupy Wall Street movement, which some of you will remember. It's really right around the time that I got started in media. So I have a lot of memories of Occupy Wall Street, spending time down there at Zuccotti Park. But this is not that. No one who has lost their job because of coronavirus did anything other than just be a human being in America at this point in time. So that's why we are trying to figure out as a society how to deal with this. But the government rescue package, bringing us back to that, is not sufficient at all. And everyone knows that. So, as I've said, this might be buying us time. We have this concept of flattening the curve. Everyone's heard about it. We also hear about social distancing. This is a little bit of an aside. Why don't we just call it distancing? Practice distancing. We know what we're talking about with that, right? Let's just do distancing. Social distance. It's the opposite of social. It's really antisocial distancing. Am I the only one who thinks this? I know. Maybe it's, potato, but no one says potato. No one says tomato unless you're from the UK, in which case we got a whole lot of other words to approach, like herb. What's up with that? Silent H. We won the war. We get to say silent H. So this is why I'm concerned about the mentality of people that are assuming that this is a point for celebration. This is just flattening the curve a little bit of our economic catastrophe. Meaning that it's going to spread it out a little bit. It's going to drag the economic pain out, or rather it's going to drag out the situation now of figuring out that we can't keep doing this. Right? It extends, it buys us some time, but the unemployment numbers are going to keep going up, and this is just funding people as those numbers are going up, and the anger that people have might be a little less than it would otherwise be. But eventually we're going to reach a point where people just say, we can't do this. And there doesn't seem to be any recognition of this among Democrats. And the president has been pretty clear about why he thinks that is. And this is where you're going to see the most, I think really in some ways, this will be the most epic political fight. Put aside the virus and the realities and the fears and the deaths, and that's all real. And we've been talking about that at the first hour of the show. Now I'm talking about the politics around this, the economics involved. and this rescue package and what it is showing us. And the most, in my opinion, vicious fight of the Trump presidency between the president and his unhinged opponents is going to be over this issue. Think about what they were able to do with Russia collusion. They took something that wasn't even a thing. And I mean that. It didn't even, there was no Russia collusion. How many times did we have to talk about that over the course of about 3 years? It might have been the phrase that was uttered more by the media than anything else other than Trump's name. Russia collusion. There was no Russia collusion. We wasted 3 years of time with the media obsessed with this. Well, the economy was booming and unemployment was super low and things were great. And they were able to conjure up this dark, this ominous situation of America on what was just a lie. It was just a concoction. Coronavirus is real. This is a real problem. They say that Trump called it a hoax. That's a lie. He never called it a hoax, but they lie about him all the time. But the media is going to try and get away with rooting for failure here and with pushing the negative to the public as much as possible, in part because I think they believe it. I'm not going to pretend that there's not. Some people in the media aren't assuming that we're going to have millions and millions of people die here. I think there are some. But largely, and I think this is the bigger part of their motivation, largely because they want to harm this president. They want to destroy this presidency. And this is what the president is now saying. Play clip 12.
Is this Easter timeline based on your political interests?
What do you mean by election success? No.
You tweeted, you said that the media wants the country to remain closed to hurt your odds
No,
of
I think
being reelected.
the media would like to see me do poorly in the election. I think
lawmakers and economists on both sides of the aisle have said that reopening the country by Easter is not a good idea. What is that plan based on?
Just so you understand. Are you ready? Mm-hmm. I think there are certain people that would like it not to open so quickly. I think there are certain people that would like it to do financially poorly because they think that would be very good as far as defeating me at the polls. And I don't know if that's so, but I do think it's so that there are people in your profession that would like that to happen. I think it's very clear. I think it's very clear that there are people in your profession that write fake news. You do.
He's right. They hate him for speaking the truth, and other Republicans wouldn't be willing to say this. Certainly not other people that have run for the run as Republicans for the presidency in recent decades. They wouldn't be willing to say this. But Trump is right. You can already start to war game out in your head what the preferred outcome is for many on the left. Total lockdown, government funding everybody, massive expansion of the debt until we're at 30 trillion, 35 trillion, and people forced to be enormous numbers of people in this country forced to be dependent on the government. A lot of pain and misery and despair, and then and then we get into July, August, September. What do you think they say? It's all Trump's fault. Joe Biden will fix it. Joe Biden will put America back together. And then they'll be willing to have discussions about when people can go back to work and when things can get more normal. But it'll all be blamed on Trump. There'll be a massive expansion of the federal government debt, and also just government power in the meantime. There'll be a shift in our thinking about politics for a lot of people because they'll say, okay, so really the government is the economy, and whoever controls the government therefore controls the wealth of this country in its entirety. And, they're just going to enlarge dependency, and the government is no matter what the answer to these people. So no matter how bad things get, they'll just say, well, it's because we need different people in charge. It's not that we've decided to overestimate the benefit of extreme lockdown measures for long periods of time versus what the damage will be to the economy. But you can already see, there are journalists who their preferred outcome here, and it's sick. It's wrong. It's gross. But their preferred outcome is lockdown deep into the summer, right into the height of election season. And then the Joe Biden campaign story becomes a resurrection story and saving us from the evil of Trump. Blame it all on Trump. Look at how terrible things are. The economy's in shambles. They know that this is this will be a political benefit for them. And what it does to the country in the meantime, those of you listening to this, and I know there are a lot of you, there are millions of you, those of you who are hearing this across the country who are in tough economic situation right now, who can't pay your bills, the people that are in the journalism community that are asking the president questions like how many people are okay with dying, they don't care about you not being able to pay your bills. They don't care about your life being ruined right now. They flatly do not care. And they'll pretend, they'll pat themselves in the back and say, no, they're just concerned about your safety. Oh, okay. They didn't seem nearly as concerned about anyone's safety while the H1N1 pandemic ravaged America in 2009 and killed 40,000, 50,000 people. Might have even been more than that. I should check the number. But now they're really just concerned about safety. No politics here. If they were believable human beings, if they were honest and they had a record of being fair, then I'd be more willing to hear them out on this. But no, they're not. Our media is a disgrace. And polling shows that the American people, by and large, recognize that.
And now I find that some of my Republican colleagues are very distressed. They're very upset that somebody who's making 10, 12 bucks an hour might end up with a paycheck for 4 months more than they received last week. Oh my God, the universe is collapsing. Imagine that. Somebody who's making 12 bucks an hour now, like the rest of us, faces an unprecedented economic crisis with the 600 bucks on top of their regular unemployment check, might be making a few bucks more for 4 months. Oh my word, will the universe survive?
Bernie Sanders is such a worthless demagogue. It's amazing that he's number 2 in the Democrat standing, but that's where the party is, I suppose. What he's saying here is he's totally misrepresenting the situation. He ended up going along with what Chuck Schumer wanted anyway. That it just doesn't matter to these people. I mean, so much of what politics has become in this country, and maybe this has been true of politics for a long time, is what it does for the person who is making the case and what it feels like to be supporting that person who's making the case. And this is why so many of the defining characteristics of democratic politics, as we talk about here on the show, virtue signaling, hypocrisy, because it's just all about, it doesn't matter what's fair, what's true. It's all about how does it make you feel when someone says that and you support what they're saying. How does it make you feel when somebody gets up and tells you that all you have to do is believe that the good, smart people listen to the experts? Anybody who knows anything understands that what does it even mean to listen to the experts? There are people. Ask an economics expert any question, and then I'll have another economics expert take the opposite answer. And then you tell me, what do? I'm just supposed to listen to the experts. And Bernie Sanders is he's a buffoon.
Now, as you know, I'm not a Democrat. There are a lot of things that Democrats do that drive me crazy. I watched the first Democratic debate, and I just looked at wonderment and at how far left Twitter had pulled the party. But there is no doubt, if you're talking about the party of life right now,
right,
as the American conservative wrote, right now, these conservatives are making Democrats who are pro-choice actually look more pro-life because they're only worried about the unborn. It is the born. It is the weakest among us. It is senior citizens who they're ready to euthanize.
It's so ugly. It's so unfair. It's so disgusting. Joe Scarborough's such a moron. Oh, my God. They pay him millions of dollars at MSNBC. I'm not a Democrat, Yeah, you just carry water for them every day. Help them every single day. You tell Democrats watching, who watches MSNBC? Democrats. Why does Joe Scarborough think he's so palatable to a Democrat audience? Because he is an apostate to the conservatism that he pretends to believe in. Right? He is an apostate for the ideology that he claims to have been a supporter of back to when he was a member of Congress in Florida. But this is essentially the distillation of the argument. Yeah, Republicans just want people to die. It's just as stupid as the argument over climate change when they say, you don't care if the world ends. Maybe I just disagree that the world's going to end because of cow farts and what I'm currently breathing out when I'm doing a radio show. Maybe I disagree with that. And maybe there's a lot of good evidence and information to support my skepticism of the so-called scientific consensus around that issue. Remember, Democrats believe that there's a scientific consensus in climate change, but there is no scientific consensus on whether there are two genders. That's just a fact. They don't think there's a scientific consensus on that. They also think there's a consensus of experts on what to do now. Really? Well, why? Every country is taking different kinds of approaches to this. So what is the consensus is lockdown? Okay, fine. Listen to the experts. Consensus is lockdown. For how long? How long do the lockdown? What does lockdown mean? Can no one leave their home? Should we lock people up in prison who leave their homes? What's an essential business? You know, they try to distill this down to very easy slogans to chant to appeal to the mob mentality of the left. They don't ever get into, well, no, there are still tough calls to be made. There are still decisions that we have to look at. And we have to see what's really going to happen as a result of the things we're already doing. And then there's some, at some level, there are the expert. Wait. I'll get back to my experts thing. Here is the complaint over the bill, that it was incentivizing people as it was to not work if they could work. So here's Senator Rick Scott talking about that. Play 18.
We've got to help them. But the moment we can go back to work, we cannot create an incentive for people to say, I don't need to come back to work because I can do better someplace else. These employers are going to need these workers to rebuild this economy. So we cannot be paying people more money on unemployment than what they would get paid in their job. So I'm very supportive of this amendment. It's the right thing. It's like what Tim said. People want to work, but don't create the wrong incentive. And if we do, we're going to hurt a lot of businesses and a lot of families in this country.
It's just about making sure that the bill incentivizes people to continue to work if they can to create economic activity instead of relying on the government to send them checks. But, you know, Bernie Sanders and the rest were acting like this was all meant to throw people out on the streets and ruin their lives. And no honesty in the back and forth. Lindsey Graham said basically the same thing about this. Play 19.
We have incentivized people not to go back to work. That is I just can't imagine the effect in South Carolina and other places when you realize you're getting $24 an hour on unemployment. So every employer in the state has to compete against a $24 an hour minimum wage now, I guess. It's more responsible to make sure that in unemployment insurance setting, you don't get more than you actually make, because that does incentivize people to leave their employment. I'd like a vote on that. I think hopefully the body could come together.
Here's what I think is behind a lot of this debate right now, and this is why I played this through. It goes back to my wargaming of what the Democrat media and the Democrat Party wants now. They want lockdown because lockdown then lets them claim that they have the moral high ground. I mean, continued long-term. I've said 15-day lockdown, fine. But then we have to start thinking about what we do beyond that. And I'm right in the middle of this, dealing with this. You know, I could get sick with this and deal with it, you know, deal with the bad stuff that has happened to people, even who are on the younger end. I'm not that young, but on the younger end who are healthy, just like anybody else. But I do think that it's important that we keep America going. And I don't know why that's such a hateful thing to say to so many people. I'm not telling senior citizens to go back to work or to, you know, leave their homes or to go take risks or anything else. No. But I want to make sure there's an economy in place so that we can pay for the hundreds of thousands of ventilators that we're told we need now. So we can pay the people that are going to be transporting them and operating them. So we can pay for the people who are going to have heart attacks. Because guess what? There'll be a lot of them. Because there always are people having heart attacks over the next 6 months. It's not just about dealing with this virus. There are other things that have to be a part of the conversation, other life and death issues. And I know sometimes I get agitated, and then I rub my face and I realize, gotta stop doing that, Buck. I'm trying not to. At least I'm home, unless Tallulah has. I don't. They said that they initially said that dogs can't get this, and now they're saying that maybe they think. I don't know. I'm pretty sure dogs can't get this. I think we know that bats can. And I know this is it's not an important point, but I would bet any amount of money that bat soup doesn't even taste good. But people believe that there's some, mystical power to some of these animal potions that, they eat in some parts of the world, in China notably. Oh, boy. But here's what I was saying about the war gaming and why the Democrats, I think, are so dug in on just create the answer to this problem is stay home. The government's going to send you checks. The grocery stores will be stocked. Netflix will be on. Stay home. The government's going to send you checks. 3 months, 4 months, 5 months. Guess what? If they can extend that into July or August, the economic devastation you won't really know in some ways until you try to get the economy going again. I mean, you'll see the unemployment numbers and everything else, but there'll also be a recognition of, because what you're going to hear when things are really bad is, oh, no, we'll just turn this back on. People don't understand. It's not as easy as just turn it back on. But the economic devastation, if they push it further into the summer, and I do believe they're thinking of it this way, which I agree is disgusting, but I think this is the mentality. Remember, they have been saying that Trump is a clear and present danger to all of us, to democracy. They've said that Trump could lead us into nuclear war with North Korea because he's so dumb. So if I believed that and I were a Democrat, wouldn't I see this now as an opportunity to do two things? Oh, I care so much about everybody that I don't want anybody to get sick from this, even though hundreds of thousands of people are already sick around the world, and tens of thousands are already sick here in America, and that's going to continue to happen as long as we have human beings who are moving around at all. But they get to pretend to be the ones that care so much about life in this issue, but also they get to drive us further into an economic depression, and then the narrative becomes very similar in a sense, isn't it, to what happened in 2008. Barack Obama will unite us. You can see this coming together. Barack Obama came on the scene at a time when the U.S. economy was in free fall because of, we all know, the housing crisis, the mortgage crisis and credit default swaps. But Obama's inspirational, completely vapid rhetoric, right? Hope and change and all this stuff. Inspirational posing and all this stuff that he did without any real background to suggest that he knows anything about the economy or anything else. And he was able to crush the Republican contender at the time because what happened? People were mad. The Republican Party was in charge. You wanted something else. Hope and change. What do you think? They know that Joe Biden doesn't know where he is right now. They know that Joe Biden is confused and old and belligerent and weird. They know all of this. They won't admit it publicly now. They were admitting it 6 months ago, and they were hoping somebody younger and better would come along. But what do you think the narrative is going to be? To restore the Democratic Party to power, to put them back in the position, and also keep in mind, maybe put them in power with a feeling of being they have like a blank check. The Democrats, what are their favorite president in history really is FDR. So they like people, the New Deal, FDR, they're going to like the pull us out of a depression parallel there. And actually, I think their favorite president in history is probably Barack Obama. But remember, it was also that he was pulling us out of a ditch that the Republicans drove us into. You see the narrative forming right now. If Trump is able to start turning the economy back on in 30, 60 days, and we start to see things, doing a little bit better, and yes, we're still going to have more COVID-19 patients. Yes, there's still going to be a health emergency. But, we're going to be all hands on deck to handle that, get people the best care we can. We've been staffing up, getting masks. General Motors and these other major corporations are churning out equipment. And, we're going to be doing these two things at the same time. Then all of a sudden it's the realization the Democrats will have that Trump's poll ratings right now, which show that 60% of Americans approve of what he's doing right now. They're not going to say, I don't want to put the crazy guy who looks like he's lost a couple of steps and no one's wanted to be president for the last 30 years other than him. I don't want to change things up, put him in charge. Trump's handling this well. He's got this. You know that they are thinking about it this way. You know that there is a belief among Democrats that the longer they drag out the shutdown economy and the more terrified they make people, the better the chances are for Joe Biden to become president of the United States in the next election. And they are thinking about that. I know they shouldn't be. It's gross, but I promise you already know they are. And that's affecting their coverage. That's why they're asking Trump questions like, how many people dying is okay with you? One of the dumbest questions I've ever heard in that room. And there are some doozies when it comes to dumb questions.
We're also, as you know, building numerous hospitals and medical centers throughout certain areas in New York. It's at the convention center, the Javits Convention Center. We're doing 4 hospitals, and we're doing throughout the state 4 medical centers there, somewhat different. I want you to know that I'm doing everything in my power to help the city pull through this challenge. I'm working very hard in New York. It's really by far our biggest problem. Maybe it will be, maybe it won't be. But there's a lot of good, capable people working on it with us, and our teams are working very well with the state representatives.
New York is the hardest hit by this by far. And the president is a born and raised New Yorker, just like me. Dr. Fauci is also a born and raised New Yorker, by the way. And as I've told you, went to my high school, Regis High School here in New York City. I do believe that Donald Trump recognizes the scale of the threat from coronavirus to New York. And I think that he does love this town. He loves this city. It's his town, even though 9 out of 10 New Yorkers politically don't vote for him, New York City people at least. Or maybe it's 8 out of 10. But he loves this town. He cares about its people. And I think that he'll do everything in his power to help as much as he possibly can. There's an interesting dynamic playing out between Cuomo and Trump right now where they've had a little bit of, there's been some public, not personal tension, but tension on response to this. Cuomo was saying that the ventilators, they're not getting enough ventilators from FEMA, and this is all about saving people. It's not about politics. Trump and his team are saying, we have asked everybody who can make ventilators, and they are moving as fast as they can, and we're not invoking the Defense Production Act because they're already producing. They're already doing what we would tell them they have to do under the DPA. So why invoke? Well, there's no need to invoke it, right? Because you've already asked the companies that you want to try to help get this going. They're complicated pieces of equipment. It's not like, look, the face masks that people are building, and I know Mike Lindell, MyPillow, and other people are helping out. That's wonderful. Those are obviously less complicated devices than ventilators, and there are only so many companies that could scale up fast enough to make ventilators here that there would be a difference. And the Trump administration is saying that they've already reached out to those companies, and effectively this is underway right now. We'll see in time, how this shakes out, because to my earlier point about the narrative here and what Democrats are hoping they can accomplish and what their political plans are with all of this. What if Cuomo, and I know that we're told, they would never try to replace Biden. If Cuomo becomes the standard bearer for the Democrat Party of how to handle this, because Joe Biden stuff on the sidelines, it just looks like the guy who's sitting at home in his lazy boy with a big thing of popcorn and a beer, who's yelling about how he's a better coach than like the guys in the Super Bowl or whatever, right? I mean, Joe Biden, it looks kind of pathetic when he did his little this is what I would do press conference. Cuomo is on the front line, and states, especially New York State right now, really matter. If he becomes even more of the national figure on this issue than he had been, I wonder if the rivalry between Trump and Cuomo, the political rivalry, once the storm passes here of the surge in cases in New York, if it just becomes too apparent to everybody and the Democratic Party has to do some real thinking. Here's one option. Biden, I know, has said that I think he said he'd pick a woman for his vice president, but That was before this crisis hit, or right around the beginning of it. Cuomo is vice president, with Biden claiming that he's only going to do one term because of age and health reasons. But he's going to do a proper handoff to Cuomo. Now, look, this is speculation, which I know is usually not worth that much. But I do think you need to watch the way this plays out between Trump and Cuomo, because I think at some point Cuomo is going to turn on him. And that's going to be the moment when you realize it's gone political, no matter what happens in the weeks ahead. I think Cuomo is preparing for an ambush against this administration down the line, irrespective of how much Trump does. That's my estimation of what's going to happen here in this town where I'm currently broadcasting.